I always thought I knew everything about my wife, but then I found something that changed everything. It started with a simple mistake. I was looking for a receipt in her drawer when I found an unfamiliar bank statement. At first, I barely glanced at it, ready to move on. But then something caught my eye. It had my wife's name on it, but it wasn't our shared account. My heart skipped a beat. A secret account? I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe an old account she forgot to close. But curiosity got the best of me, and I took a closer look. The deposits were recent. The balance was much higher than I expected. Something about it felt wrong. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just some emergency fund she never mentioned, but as I thought about it more, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something wasn't right. We always talked about finances openly. Why would she keep an entire account hidden from me? I folded the statement back carefully, placing it exactly where I found it. My mind was racing. Was she hiding money from me? Was she planning to leave? Or was she using this money for something else? A darker thought crept into my mind, one I didn't want to consider. Was she cheating? I felt ridiculous for even thinking it, but once the thought was there, I couldn't shake it. I wanted to confront her immediately, to ask her what the hell was going on. But then, another thought stopped me cold. What if she lies? What if I ask and she tells me exactly what I want to hear? What if I never find out the real truth? That's when I knew. I wouldn't ask her. I wouldn't give her the chance to cover her tracks. I had to find out the truth myself. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. There had to be a logical explanation, right? Maybe it was just an old account she forgot to mention. Maybe she was saving up for a surprise. Maybe, just maybe, I was overthinking everything. But the more I thought about it, the worse it felt. My wife and I had always been open about money. We shared everything, our expenses, our savings, our plans for the future. So why would she need a secret account with tens of thousands of dollars in it? And more importantly, why was she hiding it from me? That night as we sat at the dinner table, I watched her closely. She was laughing, telling me about her day like nothing had changed, like she wasn't hiding anything. But now, I saw her differently. Had she always been this relaxed? Or was she just good at lying? I forced myself to act normal, to pretend I wasn't suspicious. But inside, my thoughts were spiraling. I needed answers. The first red flag. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I took her phone. I had never done this before. I had never needed to. But now, I had to know. I opened her banking app, expecting it to be locked. It wasn't. My pulse pounded in my ears as I scrolled through the transactions, and there it was. Every 2 weeks, like clockwork, there was a withdrawal from our joint account, always the same amount, always transferred to the same place. A name I didn't recognize. I copied it down, my heart pounding. Was this the name of her secret account? Or was it someone else? I searched the name online. Nothing. Frustrated, I kept digging. I checked credit card statements, old emails, even her Venmo history. Nothing obvious. But then, as I was about to give up, something caught my eye, a recurring payment. A hotel. My stomach dropped. The second red flag. I clicked on the transaction history, scrolling back months. She had been sending money to this unknown name for nearly a year, and at the same time making frequent charges at a small boutique hotel across town. The same hotel, over and over again, always during the day, always on weekdays when she was supposed to be at work. I felt sick. This wasn't just a hidden account. This was something else entirely. My hands trembled as I put her phone back where I found it. I needed to get out of there before she came out of the shower. I stepped into the hallway, trying to clear my head. Was she cheating? The thought hit me like a freight train. I had never doubted my wife before, not once. But now, as I put the pieces together, it all started to make sense. The hidden account, the secret transfers, the hotel charges. I had to find out the truth. The final straw. That night, I decided to push my luck. As we sat on the couch, I casually asked, "Hey, have you been talking to anyone new lately?" She didn't even flinch. Didn't hesitate for a second. "Not really, just the usual people from work." "Why?" My chest tightened like a vice. She was lying. And the worst part? She didn't even hesitate. Everything inside me screamed to confront her, to demand the truth, but something held me back. If she could lie this easily to my face, What else was she hiding? That's when I knew. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. I had to catch her in the act. And this time, I wouldn't stop until I knew everything. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. My wife had just walked into the same boutique hotel I'd seen on her credit card statements. This was it. Proof. I had prepared myself for this moment, convinced myself that I was ready. But nothing could have prepared me for the way my heart pounded as I watched her step inside. I sat frozen in my car, debating my next move. I could storm in there, demand answers, make a scene. But I knew if she was really cheating, she'd find a way to lie. Remember, I needed undeniable proof. I needed to catch her in the act. So I waited. 15 minutes later, I saw her. She stepped out of the elevator and into the lobby. She wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, tall, dark-haired, probably in his late 40s. Not someone I recognized. They weren't holding hands, but they were walking too close. Too familiar. My stomach twisted as I watched her pull something out of her bag. An envelope. She handed it to him, and he nodded before placing a hand on her shoulder. I saw red. I didn't care about being discreet anymore. I threw the car door open and marched straight into the hotel. By the time I reached them, the man had stepped away, but I didn't stop. "Who the hell is this?" I demanded. My wife's face went pale. The man took a step back, eyes widening, her face drained of color. She stumbled back, almost knocking over a chair, eyes darting between me and the exit. "Ethan," she stammered. "I can explain." But her voice wavered. Even she didn't believe her own words. I let out a bitter laugh. "Really? Because it looks a hell of a lot like you sneaking off to a hotel with some guy and handing him money." The man cleared his throat. "Maybe we should talk somewhere private." I turned to him, fists clenched. "I don't think we should talk at all." My wife grabbed my arm. "Ethan, please." Something in her voice made me pause. She wasn't defensive. She wasn't angry that I'd followed her. She just looked afraid. The anger in my chest dulled just slightly. "Then explain," I said, "because right now it sure as hell looks like you've been lying to me." She took a shaky breath. Then she said something I never expected. "I wasn't giving him money. I was giving it to his daughter." The words hung between us, foreign, confusing. I frowned. "What?" She turned to the man. "Can we just tell him? He deserves to know." The man nodded, and then everything I thought I knew about my marriage shattered. The secret she never told me. The man, James, wasn't her lover. He was a lawyer. And the little girl she had been sending money to wasn't his daughter. She was my wife's. My wife had a daughter. A child I never knew about. A child she had kept a secret from me for our entire marriage. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I don't understand," I stammered. "Are you telling me you had a kid before we met?" She nodded, eyes glossy. "I was 18, she whispered. "I got pregnant. The father wanted nothing to do with her. I wasn't ready to be a mom. I thought adoption was the best choice." I felt my breath hitch. I had known my wife since college. We had talked about kids before, how she wasn't sure if she ever wanted them, how she had always been hesitant. It made sense now. But that didn't explain the secret bank account. "If you gave her up, why are you sending her money?" I asked, voice hoarse. She glanced at James, then back at me. "Because her adoptive parents died in a car accident 2 years ago. She's been living with her aunt, but things have been difficult." I felt the weight of her words settle in my chest. "She doesn't know who I am," my wife continued. "I never wanted to interfere with her life, but I couldn't just do nothing, so I've been helping. Quietly." I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process everything. All this time I thought she was cheating. But the truth was so much more complicated. "You should have told me," I said finally. "You should have trusted me with this." Tears welled in her eyes. "I was afraid?" "Of what?" "That you'd look at me differently. That you'd think I was a liar, or that I had kept too much from you. That you'd hate me for not telling you sooner." I shook my head, feeling exhaustion settle into my bones. "I don't hate you," I said. "But I don't know if I can forgive you for keeping this from me." Silence filled the space between us. For the first time since I had discovered the bank statement, and I wasn't sure if I even wanted the truth anymore. Because now that I had it, I didn't know what to do with it. We drove home in silence. The weight of my wife's confession sat between us like a wall neither of us knew how to climb. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. I had prepared myself for anything, an affair, a betrayal. But this was something I never could have imagined. She had a daughter, a child I never knew existed. I pulled into our driveway and killed the engine. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then finally she spoke. "Ethan, please say something." I exhaled sharply. "What do you want me to say?" "That you understand. That you don't hate me." I turned to look at her, my emotions tangled in a knot so tight I couldn't tell if I was angry, hurt, or just lost. "I don't hate you," I said finally. "But I don't know how to process this. You kept something this huge from me for our entire marriage." She swallowed, her hands clenched in her lap. "I was scared. I didn't want my past to change how you saw me." I let out a bitter laugh. "And now?" She looked down. "Now I've probably lost you anyway." I didn't answer. I didn't know the answer. All I knew was that the trust I thought we had was gone. That night we slept in separate rooms. The breaking point. The following days were a blur. We moved around each other like strangers, speaking only when necessary. She tried to fix things. She made my favorite meals, asked about my day, left little notes like she used to when we first got married, but it didn't change anything. Because every time I looked at her, all I could see was the lie. One evening, I finally broke. "Do you regret it?" I asked. She looked up from her plate, confused. "Regret what?" "Giving her up, keeping it from me." She set down her fork, her hands shaking. Not a day goes by that I don't think about her. But at the time, I thought I was doing the right thing. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. And keeping it from me? That felt like the right thing, too? Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't want to lose you." I let out a sharp exhale. "You lost me the moment you decided I didn't deserve to know the truth." She flinched like I had hit her. Silence filled the space between us. I knew I was being harsh, but how was I supposed to pretend that this didn't change everything? "I love you, Ethan," she whispered. "I never meant to hurt you." I believed her. But love wasn't the problem, trust was. And no matter how much I wanted to fix things, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had already fallen apart. Moving on. We tried therapy, we tried talking, we tried pretending like we could fix what had been broken. But some things, once shattered, can never be made whole again. The divorce was amicable. No screaming matches, no drawn-out legal battles. Just two people who had once loved each other realizing they couldn't go back to the way things were. She kept the house. I moved into a small apartment across town. I thought I'd feel free once it was over. I thought I'd feel relieved. Instead, I felt hollow. One night, months after we had signed the papers, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo. A little girl, no older than 10, standing next to my ex-wife, her daughter, a child I never got the chance to know. A note was scribbled at the bottom. "I told her about me, about you. She wants to meet you someday if you're open to it." I stared at it for a long time, my chest tight. I wasn't sure if I was ready. But maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of the story. Maybe it was just the beginning of a new one. I held the photo in my hands for a long time. The little girl in the picture had my ex-wife's eyes, but there was something else there. A quiet curiosity, a resemblance to someone she had never met. Me. For weeks I debated what to do. I wasn't her father, I had no claim to her life. But a part of me wondered, did she ever wonder about me? Did she know that I had once loved the woman who had brought her into this world? Did she know that for years I had no idea she even existed? I put the photo away, telling myself I wasn't ready, that I needed more time. But deep down, I knew the truth. There are some things you can never prepare for. You just have to take the leap. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid to take that step. What I learned from losing my marriage. For a long time, I thought betrayal had only came in one form: infidelity and dishonesty, broken promises. But I learned that sometimes betrayal isn't about cheating. Sometimes it's about omission. My wife didn't lie to hurt me. She lied because she was scared. Scared of losing me. Scared of facing the past. Scared that the person she had become wouldn't be enough for me if I knew everything about who she used to be. And maybe, in a twisted way, I understood that. But understanding didn't change the fact that her secret destroyed us. because love, no matter how strong, can't survive without trust. And once trust is broken, some wounds never heal. That was the hardest lesson of all. At first, I struggled to adjust. We had built a life together, and now I was alone. I moved into a small apartment, spent nights staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made a mistake. But with time, the pain dulled. The bitterness faded. I started doing things I hadn't done in years. I traveled. I picked up new hobbies. I reconnected with old friends. And slowly, I began to understand that losing her wasn't just about losing my wife. It was about losing the life I thought we had. A life built on half-truths and things left unsaid. Where we are now, divorce wasn't what I wanted, but it was what we needed. I saw my ex-wife once in a while. We were polite, civil, but there was always a distance between us. Too much had been left unsaid for us to ever go back to what we were. She had focused on rebuilding her relationship with her daughter. I had focused on learning how to trust again. For a while, I was afraid that I would never be able to love again, that every relationship would feel like a ticking time bomb, waiting to reveal some hidden truth. But life doesn't stop just because your heart gets broken. One day I met someone new. She wasn't like my ex-wife. She was open, honest, and had no problem sharing her past, even the parts that weren't perfect. It was terrifying at first, trusting someone again after having it broken so badly. But step by step, I let my guard down. And as for that letter? A year after the divorce, I finally wrote back. It was short, simple. I'd like to meet her. Because at the end of the day, the past can't be rewritten. But the future, that's still unwritten. And maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to start a new chapter.